underwear beyond the 12-mile zone. To home in my mind to be free from habitually running with the night that calls for a love without sight. Where darkness begins to melt into light. Where darkness begins. You feel like a breath of love, warm against his cheek, soft and sweet as a clove.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Psychedelic here. Acid Archive Diaries, number 11. Let's jump in. So this is one that I feel like is a little underappreciated in most psych circles. I mean, the trip meter's not off the charts. It's pretty subdued. But considering it was the time period, this came out in around 69, 70. It certainly fits my bag. It fits my needs, I guess. And I kind of like those LPs that dive into diverse circuits. You know, they don't necessarily stick to one style. They kind of just jump off the wall. And this is very much one of those Jekyll and Hyde kind of records where they'll do a total switch up, a total 180 on you. And this is Milkwood Tapestry. It doesn't really get discussed very much, but as you can tell by the sleeve design, they put a lot of thought into it. Just a simple pitch black. Where darkness begins to melt into light. I guess that's pretty much the only indication you get when looking at this thing. I mean, there's no indication of what style it's going to be. You know, Milkwood Tapestry. And then you look at some of the song titles. They're pretty descriptive too. Beyond the 12-mile zone. Then right after that, Wondrous Fairy Tale, Sunday Raindrops, Journeyless Ride, Seas of Marshmallow Bees, Pink Painted Butterfly, The Purple Side of Sunset. You know, pretty colorful imagery there going on. Get a gatefold here. Now, if anything, I mean, this would be a better, more ideal front and back shot for an album sleeve. Not necessarily the gatefold, but maybe that was the whole idea behind it. That just totally tanked. But yeah, it's a promo copy here, as you can tell. I feel like more promo copies pop up than stock copies, which says a lot. But yeah, this came out in 69, and it's basically a duo behind this. I got some notes here to remind me, because I got some funky names here. Ronald Antonelli and Joseph Rainshoff. And Ronald, he was the one that, he kind of studied and taught classical music. He was like a music teacher. And then Joseph was like more of a law student going to school at the time, based out of the NYC area. And they basically met through an ad that Rainshoff had spotted one time. Ronald was promoting out there, and he was spotted. They were actually performing once they got together. They were kind of doing the circuits, you know, around New York City, and they got spotted by Donovan's manager, and which landed them a deal on Metro Media. So it was that simple. Basically started out as a folk duo, but then, of course, with this record, got a little more embellished in the style and have a backing string arrangements going on, and a little more electric on some spots too. So the album starts off with a track called Beyond the 12-Mile Zone. When you listen to it, it's got a great like driving kind of hard rock riff, and lots of wailing guitar, screaming vocals, sort of this kind of proto-punk energy about it. And then do a total 180 once you get to the next track, Wondrous Fairy Tale, which kind of goes into that UK Nirvana inspired like Baroque pop flavor going on. I'm going to leave a sample of exactly how it goes on the record, the transitioning of how different the styles are, uncut. So you get a little taste of that. But yeah, man, it's one of those half and half records. You know, half of this is kind of more lingering on the psych rock. I think there's like 4 tracks that are really much in that sort of direction. But then the rest of it kind of flows in this more, like I said, Baroque pop, you know, string arrangements, very orchestral, like fairy tale type of whimsicalness. And then you got some folk tracks too, like I think it's Signs of Invisible Chalk. No, that's the hard rockin' track. Sunday Raindrops, Seas of Marshmallow Bees has a little bit of harpsichord, but also very upbeat as well. Look at the Children kind of has more of like almost like a medieval type of folk, almost Renaissance folk in a way, inspired. And you got a track, I think it's the track Sunshine Castles, opens up with this sort of orchestral, like warming up string arrangement. And then it kind of bleeds into like a kind of blues rock track. That's like really the only trippy moments on here. And then concludes with another hard rockin' track, Purple Side of Sunset. And yeah, their vocals very much remind me of that Nirvana type of style. But also some of the writing too, with like tracks like the Windowsill Song. And yeah, the record just kind of keeps flowing along. And it's very poetic lyrically. Got a lot of thought put into them. And some of the arrangements too are very complex. You know, it seems like each verse always kind of switches up here and there. It's never too repetitive. It always keeps kind of just flowing along. Got a little more info on here, I think. Yeah, they performed at Keene State College, and the ad said something like, you know, they're kind of promoting their show. And this was like shortly after the album came out, and it said something like, you know, they're a synthesis of diverse musicals and sort of, like it says here, medieval Renaissance folk. This was actually engineered by Tony Bon Jovi, who is a pretty well-regarded, you know, engineer. He'd done several records after this. He's actually the cousin to John Bon Jovi. And then, you know, they later performed at the New York Museum of Modern Art, several different local college campuses around the, you know, New England area. Didn't travel too far, you know, it was pretty much New York State based. And after that, they pretty much dissolved, you know, kind of went their separate ways. You know, I think one of them may have gotten married around this time, and just that's just kind of how they all naturally dissolved. I guess there was a CD reissue that came out like in the early 2000s, which has a photo of them too. And I guess it's got like bonus tracks on there, which I may have heard once, but I don't really remember anything too memorable on there. And there is a vinyl reissue of this as well. It has a slightly different cover. I think they used the gatefold as the front cover. And that came out several years ago, I think on GearFab. So original copies though, actually surprisingly don't run you too high. I think I got this one for like 20 bucks, which you can still, I think, acquire it for, you know, between 20 and 40, considering condition. But of course, naturally, a black cover, it's gonna, you know, ding up a little bit and have some ring wear visible, but you know, still worth it. It still plays pretty well, and I love how the Metro Media label just pops, man. It's kind of one of my favorite designs. One of my favorite labels. It's just pretty simple, but just kind of straightforward to the point. And now let's look in our little guidebook here. I actually haven't read this since I've gotten this out. Here we go. Milkwood Tapestry, 1969. Gatefold white label promo exists. That's gets the one rarity. I was actually kind of surprised it was in here. I just happened to be flipping through, seeing what I could do next, and yeah, it's not as rare as you would think. You know, considering most of the stuff is pretty obscure. Milkwood Tapestry's only album is a weird mix of Baroque ballads and frantic fuzz guitar screamers. The combination doesn't really work very well, especially since the ballads outnumber the noisier songs. The singer is a little too operatic to be appealing in either context, and overall this album is an interesting misfire. Still, a few songs, especially the Beyond the 12 Mile Zone, are pretty cool, and some of the arrangements are quite original. Close listens will be marginally rewarding, but also somewhat frustrating. I kind of agree with all of that. Yeah, the singer sometimes, he can kind of use that vibrato a little too heavily in some of the more gentler tracks, but I feel like with the hard rocking tracks, he works pretty well, but again, yeah, he does kind of linger on a little bit too long and a little overly dramatic, one would say. But yeah, I totally agree with all of that, you know. If they only stuck to maybe a few different styles and they weren't so diverse, you know, maybe it would land a little better. And and you know, it's not an eye candy looking cover. It's definitely not one that's gonna stick out to a lot of people. Milkwood Tapestry. You know, when I first saw this online, I thought maybe it was just, I don't know, kind of a straight up singer-songwriter type of folk thing, and in which it is at times, but otherwise a little underappreciated. And if you guys have heard this, let me know what you guys think. I don't hear this being talked about at all. So I've definitely spotted a copy here in Lincoln before. So this was actually a Discogs purchase back in like 2019, I think. So that is all for now. So thanks again for watching Acid Archive Diaries number 11. I do have 2 more queued up in mind that I'm going to, you know, push out maybe later this week or next week. And then I'm also taking another road trip again the next weekend, I should say. Not too far away, still regional, but out of state. So thanks again, and we'll catch you later.